The Acholi people inhabit northern Uganda, as you already know, where agriculture is the backbone of their livestock. Their traditional farming practices, including crop rotation, intercropping, and agroforestry, have been developed over generations to maintain soil fertility, conserve biodiversity, and mitigate the impacts of climate change. However, a relatively new phenomenon has emerged: the influx of pastoralist communities, locally known as Balaalo, into Acholi lands. While the Balaalo bring their livestock, particularly cattle, they often practice extensive grazing, leading to overstocking. No doubt. This video will examine the environmental cost of Balaalo overstocking on the climate and in Acholi, contrasting with the sustainable practices of the Acholi people. The environmental cost, future effects of Balaalo overstocking on the climate and land in Acholi. The Acholi sub-region, historically characterized by substantial sustainable agro-pastoral practices, is increasingly facing significant environmental degradation due to the burgeoning presence of Balaalo pastoralists and their associated overstocking of livestock. This phenomenon presents a stark contrast to the indigenous Acholi practices of optimism, stocking density integrated with crop cultivation, which have historically fostered ecological resilience and sustainable land use with ecological balance. This video meticulously examines the multifaceted environmental cost, particularly the future effects on climate and land stemming from Balaalo overstocking in Acholi. The first effect is land degradation and dissatisfaction. I mean to say desertification, soil compaction and erosion. The sheer number of livestock, particularly cattle, in concentrated areas leads to severe soil compaction that reduces infiltration, increases surface runoff, and significantly elevates the risk of soil erosion, especially during the intense rainy seasons, which is characterized with thunderstorm. Future implications include reduced agricultural productivity. Compacted and eroded soils lose their fertility and water holding capacity, leading to the decreased crop yields for both Acholi farmers and the forage available for their livestock of the Balaalo. This threatens food security and livestock. Formation of gullies and badlands and checked erosion can lead to the formation of deep gullies, rendering vast tracts of land unusable for agriculture or grazing, thus accelerating desertification. There would be loss of vegetative cover and biodiversity. Overgrazing disseminates existing vegetation, including grasses and young trees. The constant trampling prevents regeneration, leading to increased aridity. The removal of vegetative cover exposes the soil directly to solar radiation and wind, accelerating moisture loss and contributing to localized aridification. This creates a positive feedback loop, making it harder to vegetation to re-establish, habitat loss, and species extinction. Native plant species, crucial for maintaining ecosystem health and even supporting the culture of Acholi, the traditions and herbal medicine, and supporting local wildlife, are outcompeted for eliminated by the animals. This leads to a decline in biodiversity, impacting pollination, pest control, and overall ecosystem services. There is invasion of opportunistic species in future. Degraded lands are often colonized by invasive alien species, which are unpalatable weeds, which further reduces the quality of pasture and exacerbating the problem. Global examples of overgrazing included degradation, the consequences observed in Acholi mirror patterns seen in various semi-arid and dryland regions globally where overstocking has led to severe environmental degradation. In Karamoja, Uganda, the Karamoja sub-region also in Uganda serves as a stark domestic example. Since the 1970s, Karamoja has experienced increasing semi-aridity, which was not there before that time, exacerbated by persistent overgrazing by large livestock population, where they brought that they have a lot of livestock. This has led to widespread land degradation, soil erosion, and the loss of perennial grasses, transforming once a productive land of Karamoja rangelands into degraded landscapes susceptible to recurrent drought and food insecurity. Studies in Karamoja have also shown disappropriate location of water dams which were created to high grazing intensity and rangeland degradation. The Sahel region of Africa, large parts of the Sahel, a semi-arid belt stretching across Africa, have long suffered from desertification attributed in part to overgrazing. The loss of vegetation cover and soil degradation in this region has contributed to increased dust storms, reduced agricultural yields, and heightened vulnerability to climate variability and drought effects, leading to significant displacement and humanitarian crisis. There is also another example of Australian rangelands. In parts of Australia, the introduction of pastoralism by European settlers and subsequent overgrazing, of which the native Australians are refused by sheep and cattle, particularly in the 19th century, caused many long-lived native species of trees and shrubs to be replaced by short-lived annual plants and weed species. This leads to significantly land degradation in arid zones. We can also go ahead to talk about Norte Chico in Chile, which is an example from South America, such as Norte Chico, Chile, also illustrate how penned goats in overgrazed landscape contribute to reduced land productivity and biodiversity. The second effect that would get is water scarcity and contamination. In future, there will be depletion of water sources. High concentrations of livestock necessitate substantial water resources. Overstocking strains existing water points, including boreholes, wells, and natural springs, leading to the first one, lowering of water tables. Increased demand for water can lead to over-extraction from underground aquifers, causing water tables to drop and making it harder and more expensive to access water in future in Acholi land. There is increased competition for resources. This exacerbates conflicts between pastoralists, farmers, and local communities over access to increasingly scarce water, particularly during dry seasons, where you get water pollution, livestock waste, manure, and urine directly pollute water. This poses significant health risk to both humans and wildlife, and also it contributes to eutrophication, which nutrient-rich runoff from livestock waste can lead to algal blooms in water bodies, depleting oxygen and harming aquatic life. Another thing is also there would be spread of waterborne diseases. Contaminated water can facilitate the spread of diseases among livestock, wildlife, and human population. The third effect that we can project in the future is there will be climate change feedback loops. There will be reduced carbon sequestration. Healthy ecosystem, particularly grasslands and forests, act as significant carbon sinks. Overstocking through deforestation for pasture and degradation of grasslands diminishes the land's capacity to absorb atmospheric carbon dioxide. There would also be increased greenhouse gas emissions. Livestock, particularly ruminants, produce methane, CH4, that's the formula, through enteric fermentation, while individual animal emissions are constant. The sheer volume of overstocked animals significantly contributes to a regional greenhouse gas concentration, thus exacerbating global warming. Methane is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide over a shorter time scale. At the temperature, one cattle produces an equivalent of one charcoal stove. There would also be altered local climate patterns. Large-scale land degradation and desertification can influence local microclimates, leading to increased surface temperatures and altered precipitation patterns, potentially contributing to more frequent and intense droughts or unpredictable rainfall. The fourth thing that will come in future is social ecological impacts and conflict potential. The environmental degradation outlined above has profound socio-economic consequences for the Acholi community, whose livelihoods are intrinsically linked to healthy land, would, number one, reduce food security. Diminished agricultural productivity and depleted natural resources directly threaten the food security of the Acholi people who have stayed in war for so long and who rely on their land for subsistence. There would also be increased resource conflicts. Competition for dwindling land and water resources between Balaalo pastoralists and Acholi farmers is already a source of tension and conflict. This is projected to intensify as environmental conditions would worsen, leading to social instability. There would also be erosion of traditional ecological knowledge. The inability to practice traditional sustainable farming methods due to land degradation and external pressure can lead to the loss of invaluable indigenous ecological knowledge passed down through generations and generations. In conclusion, the environmental cost of Balaalo overstocking on climate and land in Acholi is a looming crisis with far-reaching consequences. The traditional Acholi practices of optimum stocking density with integrated crop cultivation offer a sustainable alternative, highlighting the critical importance of balancing livestock numbers with the carrying capacity of the land. Addressing this challenge requires a multi-pronged approach, which would be involving enforcement of sustainable grazing practices, implementing and enforcing regulation on stocking densities and rotational grazing, similar to successful rotational grazing strategies seen in sustainable livestock farming elsewhere, which the Balaalo will never accept that because they care about the land. Land use planning and zonation, clearly delineating grazing areas and agricultural zones to minimize conflict and environmental impact. Learning from failures in areas where unregulated expansion of farmland into grazing areas has occurred. This also reminds me of the death of the DVO of Amur, may his soul rest in peace, when there was also the issue of the Balaalo activism. There would be need of promotion of alternative livelihoods, that is supporting diversified economic activities for pastoral communities, to reduce reliance on livestock alone, and to minimize pressure on degraded lands. There would also be a cost of undertaking initiatives such as investment in rangeland rehabilitation, implementing programs for reforestation, soil conservation, and water management, drawing lessons from global efforts to restore degraded drylands. We did research in Zonal Agricultural Center in 2017 where we made genetically modified grasses, a project by First Lady Janet Museveni to take it to Karamoja and implement to plant there which are drought resistant to help Karamoja recover their climate. But I don't think it has been implemented because our work was just scientific and it stopped there. And there would be failure to address the escalating environmental degradation caused by overstocking. And this will not only accelerate climate change impacts locally, but also fundamentally undermine the long-term ecological and socio-economic well-being of the Acholi sub-region. The future of the Acholi's land and climate hinges on adopting and enforcing sustainable land management practices that prioritize ecological integrity over short-term economic gains from uncontrolled livestock numbers. Traditionally, you brag it that you're rich. Thank you.